Hello, and thank you everyone for attending tonight's webinar, Content Creation and Amplification, How to Succeed with Limited Resources. I wanted to let you know the proceeds from tonight's event is going to the Massachusetts COVID-19 Relief Fund. My name is Eric Berman. I'm the 2020 president of the Boston chapter of the Public Relations Society of America. The goal of PRSA is to help you become a smarter, better prepared, and more connected communications professional. And of course, I think we're pretty fun as well. So I just wanted to say, check out our website, prsaboston.org, for more information on programs like this one. Now I'd like to turn it over to our co-sponsor for tonight, Megan Mcgrath, who is the president-elect for only a few more days before she takes over as president of the Boston chapter of the American Marketing Association.
Thanks, Eric, and welcome everyone. Just wanted to say thank you for joining and supporting a great cause. We're excited to have tonight's conversation. The American Marketing Association is Boston's networking and educational hub for Boston area marketers. And if you haven't heard of us, feel free to get in contact with myself or Bob Cargill, who's our current president, about to be past president, also on the call, or anyone on our board. Connect with me on LinkedIn. And definitely check out our website, amaboston.org, for more events. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce our moderator, Jim Panagas. Jim worked in the software and technology and innovation space, helping companies to build their public image. A master storyteller, he develops breakthrough communication strategies that put companies in the path toward thought and market leadership. Jim, welcome, and over to you.
Thank you, Megan. Thank you, Brian. And good afternoon, everybody. Today, we're going to be talking about how marketers are having to generate more and more content with less and less resources. Sounds really fun, right? Content is a term that has popped up in recent years, but it seems to have taken on a life of its own. Almost every job description out there has to do with marketing, mentions content marketing in one way or another. So actually, before I move on to a definition of terms, let's quickly do some housekeeping. Actually, let's go back one slide real quick. There we go. So today brought to you by AMA Boston and PRSA Boston. All mics have been muted for the broadcast so that we can stay focused, and you can type in your questions at any time in the chat window. We'll try to get to those towards the end of the presentation. We expect the panel discussion to take about 40 minutes. We'll spend about 10 on Q&A. We'll get off the air right at 7 o'clock Eastern. We know you have places to go. You can tweet during today's broadcast using hashtag AMA Boston or PRSA Boston. We'd love to hear some social media tweets. And we are making a recording, which is going to be made available to everybody after the fact. So let's move on to the next slide, which is our definition, sets the stage for today's discussion. So what is content, marketing content? We looked it up on Wikipedia, and here's what it had to say. Content marketing attracts prospects by creating and sharing valuable free content. It helps companies create sustainable brand loyalty, provides valuable information to consumers, and it creates a willingness to purchase products from the company in the future. This is a relatively new form of marketing that does not involve direct sales, which kind of caught me by surprise. Instead, it builds trust and rapport with the audience. So it's sort of investing in free, useful information in your audience today so that they become customers sometime in the future. It's kind of a little bit of a different animal, but it's everywhere. You know, everybody seems to be talking about content marketing. So let me introduce our panelists for tonight, and we're going to get into talking in some detail. We have one more slide, I believe. Jean Sawtelle is our communications director for South Shore Realtors, the second largest realtor trade association in the Commonwealth of Mass, with over 3,000 members spread across 24 cities and towns. Brian Hoyt is our Senior Director of Corporate Communications at TripAdvisor, the world's largest travel platform, helping 463 million travelers each month make every trip their best trip. So quite a large company there. And Diane Partis, APR, is President of Partis Communications, a Boston area firm focused on strategic, creative, and results-oriented public relations programs that further an organization's business goals. So welcome, Jean, Brian, and Diane. And let's dive into this topic. Welcome to the program. If we can go full screen so the audience can see our panelists, that would be great. Here we go. Wow, we got everybody now. Okay. So, Jean, let me start with you. who in the organization is creating all this content that's out there? You know, is it one department? Is it coming from multiple departments? Where's all this content coming from?
Well, the funny thing about me is that I'm the communications director, but I also do their government affairs. I also run the Charitable Arm of my association, the sponsorship program, networking programs, and special events. So I wear many hats, and I have a staff of me, myself, and I. So it is just me that's producing this. I do have membership-based clientele, but I'm always trying to market to increase the membership. So it is just me creating all this content all the time.
Unbelievable.
If I could also
go ahead.
Jump in. I was going to just say that we find that on the PR end, which is the area that I'm involved in, that a lot of what we do in content marketing, or we call it actually content development, is very much thought leadership, higher level information, or information that's very action oriented, tips, those sorts of things. So where we don't typically have as much of a promotional like bent to what we do, we come in at it that way when we attack usually the content development.
Brian, can we hear from you? You have a larger organization. Do you have more resources at your disposal?
Yeah, sure. So, you know, TripAdvisor is obviously one of the biggest online travel companies in the world. And you know, content marketing, you know, we talk about using content marketing in a time of limited resources. It really has been a major driver of earned media opportunities for us from a comm standpoint. But when we look, you put on our kind of our B2B marketing hat also, good content becomes the foundation also for lead generation activity. It becomes great social media content that we put into the market. And so we tend to think of content marketing opportunities, whether it's a white paper that we're putting out into the marketplace. We just at TripAdvisor last week released a research paper around sort of what we see is happening in the travel industry with regard to COVID-19, the recovery period that we anticipate happening. That paper has become the foundation for numerous media interviews and earned media opportunities, social media content. We're posting kind of data points from that paper every day on our LinkedIn channels and social media channels. And it also becomes an opportunity for us to kind of attract potential media buyers. And effectively, that's what TripAdvisor is. We're a media business in the travel space. That content becomes the gateway to bring more people into our sales flow and attract them in some of the products and services that we can offer their businesses. So we have a team that certainly of content creators that sit within the PR organization. We're also lucky to have an amazing research and insights team that operates independently from us, who we partner with, often to kind of look at data and create a lot of great content marketing pieces based off of that data.
You know, so I've seen companies assign entire organizations like R&D or software development and actually have them create content as well. And it got me to thinking, you know, are we working at cross purposes at times? Because you want to have all this great content out there, but at the same time, it has to be quality content. And effectively, companies are asking non-writers to write a lot of this stuff, are they not?
Certainly in our case, we often love when an MBA takes up the pen and tries to create prose. It involves a full-time kind of employment for us from a copy editing standpoint. I think in general, though, you're right. You have to kind of think about what's the stated purpose for the content creation. And, you know, we have engineers who write engineering blogs, and the stated purpose for that is for them to kind of help promote, you know, the intellectual advancements that they've made in engineering, and recruit other engineers to come and work at a place like TripAdvisor. And in that case, you know, it's important that the content creation is in partnership with, I would argue, the marketing communications functions within a business, to ensure that you're putting your best foot forward on the pieces of content that you put into the marketplace.
Absolutely. So Jean and Diane, it sounds like you're creating a lot of the content yourselves, right? For hands-on.
Yes, I am. I actually have a National Association of Realtors that provides some content for me, and I try to repurpose that as much as possible. Again, it's the quality of the content that you have to put out. And coming from my standpoint, where my time is really limited, repurposing content, even older content that I've had, and repurposing it again, has been very helpful to keep that constant content going.
It's pretty time consuming though, isn't it?
Very time consuming.
It's a lot of material. Diane, you were going to say something.
Yes. So I think maybe I'm the only agency that's represented here. So we work very closely with our clients. And sometimes they do have someone who does content in-house as well. And we might supplement it or do different types of content. And what we find is very important is to be able to work with them so we're coordinated and that we know what each other is doing. And then once the content is developed, as Jean said, really to repurpose it, but also to figure out how it can be used throughout the organization, how the sales organization can use it, you know, how it could be used for lead gen. So to make it really, really focused and to have this ongoing life, because as the topic is here, you know, you have limited resources and you really need to do a lot of work.
Mm. You know, I find, you know, the terminology, you know, just content still somewhat amorphous to me. Because in my mind, it's not just written words, it's graphics, it's pictures, photos, it's maybe some video snippets. Are all three of you finding it using multiple types of media in your content marketing?
I know I am. I'm using all different mediums. It's just so cluttered out there just to try to get somebody's attention right now. My joke is that I'm going to go back to using the chisel and stone because it's the only medium not being used. But I'm finding video is getting a lot of open rates, and I know blogs are really important, but I don't blog. But I do kind of steal content with permission, from other people's blogs to utilize in my association. And like I said, my membership base would rather watch a short video than to read a longer blog anyway. So that works for me. But
I would agree with you, Jean. I think the use of video is becoming more and more so important. We just announced yesterday the launch of a new travel safety initiative called Travel Safe at TripAdvisor, where you can go and find out what hotels and restaurants are doing to keep travelers safe when you know, they go visit your establishment. You know, do they have hand sanitizers? Do they require masks? And we were out pitching it in the marketplace, and we actually have found that within the earned media space that there's so many media organizations that have contracted that the act of them writing an article off of something is getting harder and harder. They're still doing it, but what we are starting to see more of is the creation of video snippets by these organizations to kind of help tell your story. And sometimes it's you know, an Adobe Rush slideshow type thing that they're putting together. But what we're finding is if we can help self-create some of that content to help with the storytelling, it's not only valuable from a content marketing standpoint for our own channels, it becomes valuable from an earned media standpoint too for these media organizations that are strapped for resources that want to continue to put information out into the marketplace, especially the digital marketplace. And having assets like videos, I think, are going to become kind of more and more important in the future when we're doing our storytelling.
Yeah, Brian, I couldn't agree with you more. And let's face it, the younger generation, they're used to watching more video than far more than we were. So it's the way they learn. It's the way they you know, learn to do new things. So I think having these videos embedded into their content marketing is terrific.
The flip side of that is, I think the old days we would create these big things we called infographics, and you know, and I think what you'll find is media less so want to publish these huge, expansive kind of graphical things that your creative department maybe once created. And they're more so likely to kind of, what I would say, publish, instead of infographics, info bites, small bits of information, small bits of creative that you can create with the big white paper that you're pushing out into the marketplace or the product launch that you have. So that's another kind of way to think about that content.
I also think that content marketing kind of, rolls into thought leadership. A lot of these things, these functions overlap. By getting your executives out there and your subject matter experts onto little video snippets, that's a lot of showcasing of your senior team. Really, really helps. Let me ask all of you this, because this is an interesting question that I think about. Corporate executives are typically fixated on ROI, return on investment. And here, by definition, this is not an ROI exercise. But it's trying to win over your audience with free, useful information. Again, are we working at cross purposes here? How do you think these corporate executives, why are they so willing to support content marketing if it isn't ROI driven? Any thoughts? I stopped the panel.
Yeah, I'm happy to jump in. So we have a saying at TripAdvisor that comes from our CEO: if it's worth doing, it's worth measuring. And I would disagree with the notion that there shouldn't be metrics associated with any kind of content marketing that you put into the marketplace. And so in a world of digital marketing, attribution methodology is becoming kind of more and more important every day. So if you're going to create a white paper, and that becomes the foundation for a webinar that you're going to do, how many people did you get coming to that webinar? How many people clicked on the white paper in that webinar? Did that lead, from a lead gen standpoint, did you use that piece of content to become a part of like your lead generation standpoint? How many people visited your LinkedIn page? How much of an audience did you draw? And so I would argue is the world of kind of old school media is turning digital. The ability to measure the effectiveness of your content marketing programs has never been greater. And at first it started with kind of paid marketing and the attribution that you could kind of do there. And now even with earned, the advancements that we're seeing, the capability that we're seeing to kind of measure earned media in particular, through companies like TrendKite, which was purchased by Cision, and Meltwater, et cetera, the advancements that we're seeing to kind of create attribution methodologies to that article that wrote about that white paper, that piece of thought leadership that you put out into the marketplace is incredible. And you're really able to begin to kind of measure that investment to get that type of visibility, to get that type of potential bounce back to your site or to your business in more meaningful ways than ever. So, again, to steal a line from our CEO and co-founder, Steve Kaufer, if it's worth doing, it's worth measuring in my view.
Okay. Diane, I'm going to throw a question at you. How do you set up your marketing teams for content development when you have such limited resources?
What I think is most important is to really get everybody on the same page and to bring in, at least for, to have the communication that you can reach people in sales who are perhaps speaking to customers and know what it is that what their pain points are and what's really driving them. To get the person who's handling SEO to, talk about what some of the terms are, what some of the things they're trying to do and accomplish, to get the executives who have the broader vision and really get tapped into their thought leadership. So what we try to do is to get different parts of the marketing team together, at least that there's a communication between them, so that we know what they're doing. For example, if someone's doing a webinar, the information in the webinar might be a great piece for us to write. So we're not reinventing the wheel each time. And if there's some piece that's being used for something else, that we can have that, or there's some statistics. So I find that a lot of times there's great gems in an organization that only that one department knows about. So we try as much as possible to get our feelers out and to have that communication going so we can grab what we need. And then once we develop something, how many different ways can it be repurposed? An ebook can become 3 blogs, can become a bylined article, can become X number of tweets, Facebook posts, whatever. How many different ways can you reuse it? And then once you have it, how can it be used by the different departments? How can it be used by sales, as a promotional piece? How could it be used for lead gen? So really bringing everybody together, at least in some sort of communication, so you're knowing what's going on, so you can use what's already there. and then, really repurpose it as much as possible, and then really make sure everybody's using it to the best extent.
I think it's a great example, and but I was thinking as you were speaking through that is, how many bodies do you have to do that? How many, you have one piece you've created, and you can think of 10 or 12 different ways to reuse it. Then you start thinking about, wow, I need some people to do all this, because if you do it yourself, it's going to take up your whole day. I mean, content marketing can be incredibly useful, but incredibly time consuming. Gene, let me put a question in your corner. When it comes to content marketing, what do you see as the biggest challenge besides budget and resources?
I'm basically.
You.
Yeah,
well,
it really is. And doing it well enough to send it out there too. I struggle with that all the time.
Time is a tough one because we can't create more of it, unfortunately. So if you had one of those instances where you have an unlimited budget, what would be the first thing that you would implement?
I would contact Brian to set up a staff retreat in Hawaii for about a month.
I like it. Cross-selling.
We're happy to help. We are happy to help. We have some great reviews for that.
But after that, I would definitely implement more staff with some expertise that I don't have. I'm always really jealous of anybody that has an IT person on their team.
Yes.
I write the front end of the website and I fix the back end of it. And when something breaks, I have to figure it out. But an IT person could do it in 2 seconds. It would take me much longer. And nothing ever breaks when you have downtime. It always breaks when you're, on a deadline or running out the door to get your kids. So I would round out my team with expertise that I don't have. So hiring staff would be the biggest thing. Next, contacting Brian.
I think that's a whole nother webinar, and that would be on how today's marketer is literally half marketer and half technologist. There's so much, more technology out there that they have to be abreast of. It's quite a different job than it was 10 or 20 years ago. Let me ask you one more question. What's the biggest thing you or your company were able to accomplish while doing more with less?
I'm actually going to tell this story because the person that asked me to be on this panel loves this story. I'm reaching back to like 2004 before reading online was the norm, but we were able to get it wasn't even me, it was my CEO, was able to get a local newspaper to design and print our newsletter for free in exchange for a sponsorship and the ability to advertise in the newsletter. The only cost we incurred was postage that I offset with selling advertising in it. So that was a really big kind of coup for us because we really do have limited budgets. And we were producing a newsletter that was mailed out to 3,000 members up until about a year or two ago. I keep doing surveys thinking that the membership would want to do it online, but most of them loved that newsletter. So that was something that we were able to produce for many, many years for our members that wasn't going to be financially feasible. I know a lot of my counterparts had to drop that a long time ago, but that was a big money saver for us and something our members really appreciated doing.
Yeah, once you introduce a marketing vehicle, it's often very difficult to pull it back and retire it. People like it.
That's what I always say. It's much easier to give people something than to take it back. So if you're going to start something, make sure that you're able to keep producing it.
Diane, let me go back over to you for a sec. How can you develop good content efficiently? Have any pointers for the audience?
So one of the things you can do is think about is creating a content calendar for the year, so you have things mapped out. And I'll say that, but at the same time, you have to make sure that you have your fingers on the pulse of what's going on, and you're ready to like throw that out or add new things based on what's going on in the world. And from that, as mentioned earlier, once you know what you're doing, what your main piece of content may be for a particular week or month or whatever, you can then look at how you could branch it out to different other types of content so it can really be repurposed and used. The other thing that you might do is look for what the media is writing about, and you could respond to an article or use that as a jumping off point for what you want to write about. I know that we do that also with industry analysts, Gartner, and some of the key firms. We talk about what they see happening, and then we can talk about that. And the other thing is to look for outside experts that you might be able to interview, do a Q&A with, or invite to do guest blogs. So those are some of the ways that you can do it efficiently.
How do you, this content calendar, I've heard a lot about. How do you maintain that? Are you putting it on, like, you know, Microsoft Office, or do you have Post-it notes all over your office? How do you build your calendar and keep it in front of you for a year, you know?
I think, you know, you could use whatever method works for you. You know, we can use often an Excel spreadsheet, and it's something that you check, you know, every month. What do we have on this month? And how do we see that playing out? And what's happening in the world right now? I mean, I think we can all agree that whatever we had planned in January and February is totally different now. And it's different for the media, and it's different for what people want to read about. And, you know, the way things are going now in the world, from one day to the next, it changes. I mean, who would have ever thought that the election might have been the fourth or fifth story or whatever, you know, in a daily news, and maybe probably doesn't even make it to the news. So with that, you need to be very, very flexible. And as mentioned earlier, if you have your ear to the ground and you're hearing what customers are saying from the salespeople or different parts of the organization, you'll know what needs to be refreshed and changed. You don't want to get rigid with your calendar. It's just something to be a guide for you.
Brian, do you have a content calendar that you work with at your company?
We have multiple content calendars. I think we think about our internal calendar. We think about our external calendar for consumers. And then we have one for the 8 million plus businesses that we work with that's more B2B oriented. And so I agree with Diane, you know, everything that we planned in January was out the window by March. And yeah, I've come to find that probably planning 4 weeks out, 6 weeks out is really the event horizon at this point that we can really kind of safely plan for. Especially in the travel industry, where right now, every week, every day, there's a new development with regards to the pandemic that we're all living through right now. The very reason we're doing this on Zoom and not at the TripAdvisor offices, where we'd love to host you next time. Yeah. But you know, I think, you know, yeah, good planning is important, and flexibility is important as well. You know, we just literally were looking at our LinkedIn schedule. You know, trading announcements. We try to do about an announcement a day from our corporate site at the @TripAdvisor handle. And, you know, we're constantly trading days effectively based on what's the most imminent, what's the most important thing that we put out into the marketplace, what's the most time sensitive. You know, one thing, just to go back to something that we were talking about earlier as well, is the different types of content, you know, that we can kind of create. And I think Diane talked about having multiple uses of output for that one piece of content you create. And we talk about it as killing, you know, 5 birds with 1 stone. There should at least always be a news story. There should be an event. There should be a byline. There should be an ebook. There should be, you know, webinars that maybe we're putting together like this to kind of help promote what we're doing. One of the new things that we started to test from a content marketing standpoint is something we're calling TripAdvisor Talks. And it's something that we're doing where we schedule interviews, whether it could be a group of people like this or one-on-one interviews through new mediums, new channels like Facebook Live and Instagram and YouTube, and utilizing those channels to kind of create almost digital programs. We talked about the power of video before. And when you talk about a new content calendar that we're building out, you know, we're really looking at how can we self-create news ultimately? How can we self-create programming that's driving people back to our site experience by taking what maybe was a go-to-web meeting or a Zoom-like meeting and turn it into actual programming that we can promote on a week-to-week basis. So I highly recommend, we're testing something new called TripAdvisor Talks. There's only been 7 episodes recorded so far, but check it out on our Facebook page, our YouTube and Instagram pages, as we look at creating new types of content that we can kind of push out into the marketplace. But that content calendar literally doesn't even go 4 weeks out. I think we get together on a week-to-week basis and say, what's the most relevant thing that we can kind of create today? And last week, I hosted a roundtable of travel journalists. This week, there's another moderator who's doing the program to kind of talk about Pride and, the significance of it being Pride Month right now. And so, sometimes you can plan months ahead, and sometimes it goes down to a week, week to week. But to Diane's point, I think you have to be flexible in your timing.
And Jim, I do the same thing because I'm so time limited, I try to schedule as much social media out as far as possible whenever I can. But when COVID hit, I kind of reevaluated, pulled a lot of stuff down just because you don't want something happening, a disaster happening with COVID and, your social media popping up saying, hey, we're having a virtual cocktail party, come see us, But I pulled something, this was kind of weird because I was reevaluating the stuff that I had up there, which normally I would just schedule it and let it go. Mm-hmm. And I wouldn't even have noticed this had COVID not hit. I was running a campaign on, it was marijuana real estate transaction related issues. And the tagline was, let's clear up the smoke. And when the George Floyd stuff hit and all that stuff, I was like, oh, I got to change that marketing just because we didn't want to seem insensitive when we put that out. So reevaluating your marketing when things are happening in the world is a really good idea, especially if you schedule it so far out like I do, because I would have forgotten about that was scheduled to pop up. So I would look at it often.
Yeah, I don't think there's ever been a more wonderful time to be a marketer, but also a more complex time. And you're absolutely right. Companies have to react almost instantly to what's going on in the community, the state, the country, the world. Headlines, change what you're planning to do or how you're going to talk about something. It's a heck of a time to be a marketer. Hey, let me encourage our audience. We have about 7 more minutes here at the panel, and then after that, we'd like to answer some of your questions. So now's the time in the chat window. If you have a question you want to put to the panel, feel free to type it in, and we'll get to it in about 5 or 6 minutes. Let me throw this one out to everybody. Are we going to reach a point where we have too much content, that we're pushing too much content out the door? I mean, how much can people consume? You have to. Are we going to reach that saturation point, is I guess what I'm wondering. Why don't I start with Diane on this one?
So I think, I don't know who said this, if it was Jean or Brian, but I know it was said earlier that quality content is really important. And I think, every company knows that they need to be a publisher, but that doesn't mean they need to be a spammer. And people are going to find out pretty quickly whether you're putting out fluff or junk or something that's meaningful to them. I always try and work backwards and think about, how each piece of content, who the audience is, what their needs are, how it's going to be received, what they care about. And for example, with the media right now, thinking of them in a way when you write a pitch letter or whatever, they're really busy. There's much fewer of them now. There have been a lot of layoffs. And they'll get really upset if you waste their time or send them something that's not relevant to them. So I think the flip side is more isn't always better. And it needs to make sense, and it needs to serve a business purpose and have a goal. And while you're doing, when we talk about the ebook could become the byline, could become this and that, we're talking a shorthand, but each piece has a different tone. It's written differently, and it might communicate a different message, and we realize that we're doing it to a different audience.
Jean, what do you think? Are we going to, at some point, have too much content for the marketplace?
It sometimes feels like that, and I also have to push out information that my membership needs to know. which is difficult. And then there's stuff that we want, you know, the regular content that we have out there. So the need to know stuff is harder for me to get out to them, and I have to be really creative for them to pay attention to it. But as she said, quality content, that's what you have to do, and don't spam them just to put something out. I'd rather put nothing out than put something out just to be there.
So it's clearly quality over quantity. Mm-hmm. Brian, how about from your company's perspective?
Yeah, I mean, I actually have a bit of an opinion in that I think as the third part, you know, the fourth estate starts to shrink, more and more content from companies like TripAdvisor that sit on so much data in the marketplace are going to become more important. And so in my case, it's TripAdvisor. It could be my old employer at a place like Retail Me Not, which was looking at the retail industry. But if the data that we're putting into the marketplace is helpful, if it helps tell a story about where the industry is going, I think that is becoming increasingly important. As you know, my research and insights department is bigger than some major media organizations right now. And so I know the partnerships that I can develop with whether it's the Associated Press or the Wall Street Journal or the New York Times are meaningful because I'm giving them something that they potentially don't have access to on their own. I'm giving them data, in the case of TripAdvisor, from 460 some odd million travelers from around the globe, and every click that they make, you know, creates a trend in a specific marketplace, and there's a story that I can tell from that data. You know, going back to an earlier question before about if we had unlimited resources, I tell everyone to invest in data analytics and make sure you have some business intelligence capabilities within your business to be able to derive data that's meaningful to the marketplace. You know, before any content marketing piece is created, I would say more times than not, that content marketing that we create at TripAdvisor is largely based on some type of data point, some type of industry trend that we can report on in the marketplace. And the success of that content marketing piece is really deemed on, I think, whether it's helpful or not. And that's what brings people to webinars. We had one yesterday with hoteliers. We had 1,000 people in the United States, 1,000 hotels joined because they want to know what's happening with the tourism industry through this pandemic. And so if you can mine data and that data is useful and can tell a story about what's happening in your environment, in your industry, that can be incredibly powerful. And I think more and more in my world, I find earned media, traditional media organizations leaning on companies like us because we have insights that they don't on their own.
Just curious, because this is fascinating. Do you have people dedicated to the analytics in your business, or is it kind of just a part of everybody's job?
No, so it's not a part of everybody's job. We actually do invest in data analytics teams whose job it is to kind of help us understand how the site is reacting. Mm-hmm. And we do that from a business standpoint to make sure like we're making the right investments to give travelers what they need. And so if we create a new product and no one's clicking on it, that's not good for anyone. It's not good for us as a business. It's not a good user experience. And so we have a team of people who do that kind of like level of site research to try and understand what's happening throughout that site experience. But then on top of that, no, we do. We're fortunate to have a research and insights team that's really looking at the hotel industry, the restaurant industry. They're looking at the advertising media business to provide insights to those industries about, you know, how they can kind of run their business, what can be impactful to them from an information standpoint to help them be a better business based on trends that we're seeing in the marketplace. And as a publicist, I find it to be an incredible an incredible opportunity and an incredible resource to tap into because that's the type of information that becomes valuable, like I said, to earned media, to social media audiences, on events and webinars like this. That's what really will drive customers at the end of the day to your business if you're providing them information that's meaningful.
Very good. Well, right on cue, our audience has come up with a bunch of questions, so let's start going to some of theirs. We have a question from Eric. Assuming that we'll get back to close to normal life at some point, what change from a communications or marketing perspective would you make because of the changes you made because of COVID? Will you continue to do so? So kind of the questions about the impact of COVID on the way that we're doing our marketing and communication. Anyone want to run with that one?
Yep, I'm happy to go. I mean, we've sunsetted programs at the start of this pandemic that will certainly bring back. An example of that is we every month do something called the TripAdvisor Travel Index, where again we look at click data, and that's a consumer story more so than anything about where are people traveling. You know, the top 10 places around the world that people are traveling to. And obviously during the pandemic, at the start of it, no one was traveling. As we start to get back into recovery, we'll start to bring content marketing programs like that back into business again. And so I think, you know, for us at TripAdvisor, we'll look at some of the things that we stopped doing because we didn't want to seem tone deaf in a marketplace where no one was actually going to a restaurant or traveling or going to a museum. And you'll start to see us bring some of those initiatives back again. I think, you know, one thing we learned from this white paper that we put out a couple weeks ago is how valuable, again, good content marketing pieces can be. You know, we've generated hundreds of pieces of coverage, and, you know, an audience in the hundreds of millions at this point have been exposed to it through not just earned media, but social, and a lot of the webinars that we are continuing to host. We have an insight series called COVID Insights that we do every couple of weeks. And, you know, and I think it's made me appreciate the value of good data and good storytelling based on that data to do more meaningful pieces of content and thought leadership versus I think some of like the quick and dirty consumer things that we've done in the past that we'll bring back again as travel rebounds.
Seen any impact on your industry from the COVID virus and doing anything any differently?
Yes, we've changed a lot of our content marketing to be about COVID and about, you know, we made the real estate realtors essential during this time frame, and we're giving them information about their members and the consumers information about how to do open houses safely, that you can still sell your house during this time frame, keeping them informed about what is open and what is not and how things are going. You know, just the changes that COVID brought in, you know, and then we'll have to explain that they're, you know, brought back later.
Diane, I would bet that a lot of your clients all of a sudden showed up and said, "Oh my God, what do we do?" How's it impacted your business?
A lot of them have found something that connects with COVID and things that people need to know, be it one client who does, you know, resource scheduling in the office place and how to set up an office, one that has, you know, tools that actually do contact tracing. So there's a lot of ways of connecting, and also I deal with clients who do automation. So there's a need to, there's been like a big surge in companies realizing, of course, you know, everybody's remote, and these processes that were manual before that we were doing, oh my God, now we really got to get off, you know, the stick and automate. So there has been like at least some sort of COVID, or at least tuning into what's happening now that they've been able to talk about. And again, I think it's important that they're not, what we're doing is we're not doing something self-serving, but we're providing thought leadership, you know, where the industry is going. But I think even more so now, people want to know the here and now. What can I do? What are some strategies? You know, I have a client that does technology. How can I set up a remote office? I mean, very specific types of things. And really tying into the mood and the needs of the time.
Great, thank you. We have a question that came in from Colleen. How do you approach or think about content aimed at earned media opportunity versus marketing content aimed at customers or other stakeholders? Any thoughts from the panel?
Sure.
So, I'm sorry.
Sure. So we really deal with both, and it's interesting because sometimes when we have a theme, we look to place it first as a contributed article, if it's a piece of content that we're developing. And then once it's a contributed article, or what we call a bylined article, in our client's name, then sometimes we turn it into a blog or something else afterwards. But we feel that, getting that link and getting that, getting on the site of a publication, the third-party endorser is so critical. So, of course, we look at their audience, their readership, and we have to make it valuable for them. What's going to help their readers? What are their readers interested in? Again, so we look at the goals of the piece, looking through the lens of the publication. The other thing that I should mention is, let's say we get a nice piece, or let's say we just get a regular piece of coverage, we did an interview or whatever. We try to turn that into a blog or short summary on the website, where people can click in on that. And it's interesting because one of our clients got, great coverage, great national coverage. And one of the publications said, you know what, you can put it right on there as long as you, credit us, attribute it to us. And they did it that way. And then they had other coverage where they did a short, summary, and then they included a link. And that one, for whatever reason, it seems like that one really draws more people than even the direct cutting and pasting the whole article in and having the reprint on your site. So we try to also take the coverage that they get and use that as the content. And of course, you promote it through LinkedIn, and you promote it Facebook and Twitter as well, when you get that coverage. So I see it sort of all working together, but slightly different.
Gene or Brian, any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, just to follow up on what Diane said, I think this is not like set in stone, but I tend to find kind of data and analytics and insights work really well with earned media, especially if you're providing them insights within the kind of story arc that they're consistently telling. Like right now for us, everything is about COVID recovery. But, in the past, prior to the pandemic, it might be, what are the most popular beaches that people are traveling to? And so if I can give the earned media data that helps them with a story, we generate more coverage there. On the B2B marketing side, when I work with our colleagues at TripAdvisor who work on that type of content marketing work, whether it's through the TripAdvisor Insights portal, which a lot of hoteliers and restaurants come to for advice, it tends to be more news you can use. And so what I would kind of say is sort of, are there kind of tips that we can provide a hotelier or a restaurant about the right way to maybe engage a hostile customer who leaves a review on our website, to position that more as a customer service exercise, and to help them understand the benefits of responding to those types of reviews, or if they're creating a website, for instance, what are the important bits of information that are really important to a user right now who may be going to their website? Like, for instance, we know that over 90% of people right now who are traveling are concerned about the cleanliness of a business that they go to. And so what cleaning and hygiene initiatives do they have in play, making sure that information is available. And so if we can kind of provide them information that they can use to be a better business, that tends to be the bit of a difference between what we might share from an earned media standpoint to to some of the 8 million customers, businesses that list on TripAdvisor that we try to support also.
Cool.
We produce housing statistics, so that's where we get a lot of our earned media. They want to come to us. They want to find out what's going on in the market, how COVID's affecting the market, things of that nature. I just, produced the second month of statistics that's been through COVID right now. So it was interesting to see the numbers. The media wants that.
We have about 10 minutes left, so if the audience has any more questions, feel free to type them in. Looks like we'll get to all of them, which is great. I've got a question from Megan that came in. Any rules of thumb about content titles that work? Any titles that you're having any luck with that seem to resonate with your audiences? Brian, there's so many possibilities with travel. I can't even hazard a yes.
Yeah, I mean, for us, when we're putting stuff out into the marketplace, You know, we're lucky enough to kind of say this was a study, making sure folks know that this was a study. We do something again called the TripAdvisor Travel Index, where folks know there's going to be some type of data that we're providing them in the marketplace. And then, you know, obviously, if you're creating kind of content marketing pieces that you're hoping your business community will read, you know, 5 tips to make you a more successful business, pretty simple, again, working titles like that. I tend to find, you know, especially in the restaurant industry, where people didn't get into the restaurant industry to be marketers. They did it because they were chefs. They love cooking. They love, you know, providing that amazing food experience for customers. There's not one restaurant owner I've ever met who is thinking about how to be a better marketer. Most times that's just not the case. And so to give them that kind of USA Today style snippet of 5 things you can do to run your restaurant better, I think not just titles, but, you know, sort of consumable bites of information become increasingly important as well to that customer who might only have, you know, 20 minutes a week to think about this stuff. And so, you know, making sure it's consumable, it's the right size of information for them to act upon, I think is important as well.
Yeah, I like lists. You know, I find myself when I'm going through media, you know, so I've seen the preview.
Why BuzzFeed exists. Everyone loves listicles,
Yeah.
right? I mean, it's
Right.
the millennial generation wants more information quicker and faster. And it's why the Skim exists. It's why Morning Brew exists. It's why a lot of these publications are really trying to kind of, in list format or in short bite-sized bits of information, communicate complex topics.
I find myself, if I see a headline that tells me there's 5 things and only 2 of them are in the preview, I want to see those other 3 things. So it does make me click through. Diane, Jean, any thoughts on content titles?
Yeah, I was just going to say that it's also important to really know who you're trying to reach, what is going to be of interest to them. And I think a lot of times now, if we're writing for a publication or for our client's audience, they want actionable insights along the lines of what Brian was talking about. So tips and something that it really speaks to what their pain point is now or what they're going through or what they need to do to be successful. So definitely those listicles, 5 things to do, you know, 10 strategies, whatever. I think odd numbers, though, you know, tend to do a little bit better. Short, pithy, and something that sort of captures, you know, where they are right now and what they feel they need to know.
Jean?
Same with the housing industry, you know, how to buy a home, you know, how to save for down payment. Those things are, you know, the lists of things to do that is very relevant to people.
All right, we had another question come in from Peter. He wants to know which tools do the panelists use to develop content that the market wants? And he gave a few suggestions here: Google, Ahrefs, Uber Suggest, or something else. Some of those tools I have not heard of, but it sounds, I'm sure there's a million tools out there. Do you use any particular tools, you know, to help you come up with your content marketing plans?
The thing I would say is that a lot of times I'll do research, just good old Google maybe, and see what's being written about. You know, I'll go to, like, again, if it's a technology client, what's Gartner saying, what's Forrester, you know, sort of read what's the Wall Street Journal writing about, try and get a sense of what's going on. And, you know, from my point of view, where it's a little different from Jean and Brian, I have different clients, so I have to go in and out of different industries. So that's some of the things that I do, is just to do that, you know, sort of basic research. And again, as much as I can get from the client, you know, what they're hearing from customers, what's resonating, what's working, what's not, those sorts of things I use.
Stop your competitors too.
Oh, that's great.
Stop
Great
competitors. I like it.
Yeah,
Right.
I would
Exactly.
agree. Research is probably, you know, Google News. I hate to give Google any more traffic than they're already shifting their way, but
Yep.
you know, it's an important tool for us. But really, in our space, in the media space, knowing what e-marketers are writing about, looking at what the ad trades are reporting on, I think becomes an incredibly important way for us to kind of understand what's the type of outreach that we're ultimately going to do. I don't know if some of the tools other than Google that you mentioned. I can tell you that having a good publishing tool is equally important, and so making sure, especially if you're a solo operator, that you're utilizing, investing in tools that help you publish the multiple channels at once, especially if you're talking about social content, becomes increasingly important. So tools like Sprinkler or other social media platform publishers like that are important also. And then measuring, tools that enable you to measure. I mentioned before, tools like TrendKite, which got bought by Cision, and Meltwater have come a long way in terms of not just measuring the impact of earned media, but really looking at what that social echo is as well. It's going to help you capture that larger audience sentiment that a piece of content you're putting into the marketplace is generating.
Excellent. This just came in from Bob for the panelists. This is a very straightforward one, but I like it. Which social media channels do you tend to use the most? Very simple question. Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, YouTube, TikTok, others? What's your favorites and why?
Well, I go where my members are, and most of my members are on Facebook and Twitter. So that's where I am. A lot of them are on LinkedIn. So I stick with the three. For somebody that's smaller, that has limited resources like I do, you can't do it all. So do what you can do well. And one of the biggest challenges I have is member and board of directors expectations. Every time something starts trending, they want me to do it. And I'm like, a realtor isn't going to not join our association because we don't have a TikTok account. It's not appropriate for us. It's not professional. And, they come to us because we're professional and we provide education. So, just go where your customers are or your membership base is. Don't be everywhere if you can't do it all well.
Yeah, I think Diane said it best, like, what's your audience that you're trying to reach out to? And so for us, you would think LinkedIn is a big, important channel. It helps with recruiting. It helps our media business. You get exposure to other CMOs who might want to buy advertising on our platform. And certainly for big chain hotels, it's a way to kind of reach them. But, if you look at independent B&Bs and maybe even restaurateurs, Facebook could be an important channel to communicate to them on, and investing in things like sponsored ads on those channels to reach that audience. There's a lot of restaurateurs who don't have a LinkedIn profile. It's just not where they consume information. We had done a social media study within the restaurant space to kind of figure out where they were consuming news. And it wasn't the restaurant trades, except unless they worked at McDonald's. It was their local newspaper. It was more consumer-facing social channels like Instagram, if you're in the millennial set, or Facebook, if you're a little bit older like me. And so I think, it really does depend on the audience that you're trying to reach. And for us, we have different programs set up for different audience groups that we're trying to kind of impact.
Got it. I'm going to have to cut us off here. We've got 1 minute left. So fantastic discussion today. Thanks to our panelists, Gene Sautel, Brian Hoyt, Diane Pardis. Wonderful discussion. I wanted to bring in our AMA president, outgoing president, Bob Cargill, if we can bring him up. I know he wanted to have a few words with the audience before we sign off. Right on time.
Yes. Hey, everybody. I can't start my video. I think it's been stopped according to the settings. But I just want to say, Jim, fantastic job as moderator. And here's video. Now you can see me. Fantastic job, Jim, as moderator. Gene, Diane, and Brian, thank you so much. You guys did just a ridiculously awesome job. Really enjoyed it. I tweeted a few times about things that you said. So thank you very, very much. Many of you know that at most of our in-person events, I would bring my selfie stick and take a big group selfie. So pivoting because of the pandemic and all our Zoom meetings, I've been accustomed now to doing a screenshot selfie. So if you want to be in it, folks, I see some of your video your pictures are off. That's okay. But know that I'm going to take a screenshot in just a second. I'll give you a fair warning and I'll post it on social media. And
the camera's coming on. Here they come.
Yeah, turn the cameras on.
There we go. Come on, guys.
and I think this is my last public-facing external meetings. So I just want to say thanks to the AMA Boston Board of Directors and our members and volunteers, and also wish Megan Mcgrath, incoming president as of July 1, the very best of luck. I'll be sitting alongside her on the board, but I am passing the torch to her. Meg, you're going to rock, I know. And yes, so that's all. Thanks, everybody. Wave or smile or whatever you want to do. I'm just going to grab my snipping tool. Give me 1 second, and I'll give you about 2-second warning once I'm set. I am set. So here we go, guys. Oops, I messed up. Sorry about that.
Hardware failure.
Yeah, see, it's easier with my in person, my selfie stick. All right, yeah, hold your pose. Got it.
All right.
All right, thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
All right, good night, everybody.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Thank you all.
Thanks, Jim, and everybody else. Thank you.
Eric, do you want to?
Yeah, I just
Dean and Brian. Yeah.
I just wanted to say thank you to the panelists as well, and I just wanted a special shout out to my co-chair on this event, Helen Pinchansky. Thank you very much for all your work on it, and I hope everybody has a great rest of the week. Thank you.
Alrighty.
Thank you,
Bye,
Eric.
folks.
Thank you.
Enjoy